I took a DNA test thinking it would be a fun little science experiment. But instead, I found out the man who raised me wasn't my real father. And worse, my mom still insists that's not true, even with the evidence staring her in the face. This isn't just about a DNA test. It's about a lifelong lie, and the silence that nearly broke me. Growing up, my life was, well, normal, at least, I thought it was. We weren't wealthy. My mom worked long hours as a nurse, pulling night shifts and coming home with tired eyes but a tired smile. And my dad, or the man I thought was my dad, worked odd construction jobs. He passed away when I was 5. I remember bits and pieces of him, a scratchy beard, the smell of beer, the way my mom's face would tighten when he walked into a room. He was never the soft kind of dad. I don't remember hugs. I don't remember feeling safe. But I did remember silence. A kind of coldness between my parents that made no sense to me as a child. The kind where you just know something is wrong, but no one ever says it. After his death, everything changed. Mom moved us far away from his side of the family. She rarely talked about him, and when she did, it was clipped. Like she was trying to erase him without actually saying his name. I never asked too many questions, but the questions still lived in me. There was always this weird feeling I carried around. A gap. A disconnect. I didn't look like him. Everyone said so. My skin was lighter. My hair curled differently. My smile, well, people always said it looked like my mom's, but even she would pause when I joked, maybe I'm adopted. She never laughed. She'd scoff or change the subject. Sometimes she'd get angry, like the joke hit a nerve too deep. I thought maybe she was just still grieving, even years later. But still, the silence grew louder. I remember one time, I was maybe 13, I found an old photo album tucked away in the back of her closet. There were pictures of me as a baby, but barely any with my dad. And one photo, one that still sits in my mind like a stone, was torn. Ripped right down the middle. Only my mom and me were in it. Whoever stood on the other side had been erased. Deliberately. That should have been my first real clue. But when you're a kid, you fill in the blanks with what you want to believe. I told myself he was just a bad memory she wanted to forget. I told myself maybe that's what moms do when they've been through pain. So, I never pushed. I grew up holding half a truth I didn't even know was incomplete. And for a while, I just lived. School, friends, part-time jobs. I had 2 sisters. We weren't super close, but we had enough laughs and shared clothes to feel like family. Still, I couldn't shake that missing piece. That invisible thread tugging at the back of my mind. Why did I feel so out of place? Then one day, as casually as buying socks online, my cousin gifted me a DNA test for my birthday. "You should do it," she said. "Let's find out if we're secretly royal or something." We laughed. I thought nothing of it. Spit in a tube. Mailed it off. Didn't think about it again for weeks. Until the email came. And everything I believed about my life, started to unravel. But before I get to that, you have to understand what it's like to discover your entire identity, the one your mother built for you, might have been a lie all along. It all started with a harmless birthday gift, one of those ancestry DNA kits people get when they're curious about whether they're part Viking or descended from royalty. My cousin bought it for me as a joke. "Let's see if we're long-lost princesses," she said, laughing. At the time, I laughed too. I wasn't expecting anything more than a colorful pie chart and maybe some distant relatives in another country. I spit in the tube, sealed it, dropped it in the mailbox, and forgot about it. Weeks went by. I didn't even remember to check the results until one random afternoon. I was scrolling through emails when the subject line popped up. "Your DNA results are ready." I clicked. The first part was fun, percentages and regions. English, Irish, a splash of Mediterranean. But then I got to the section labeled DNA matches. And my stomach turned. 2 names popped up immediately under close family, first degree. One was a woman I didn't recognize, listed as a half-sister. The other was another unfamiliar name, marked as an aunt. Neither of them were related to my mom's side. And neither were connected to anyone from my supposed father's family. At first, I thought there was a glitch. A mistake in the system. Maybe someone's sample got swapped with mine? I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. But the numbers were clear. The shared DNA percentages? They didn't lie. These people weren't strangers. They were family. And suddenly, it all came rushing back. The missing photo. The jokes that made my mom go cold. The feeling I never quite fit in. I called my mom that night. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe confusion. Maybe tears. Maybe even the truth. But what I got was denial. "Mom, I took a DNA test," I said, carefully. There was silence on the other end. "Okay? It says I have a half-sister and an aunt. They aren't from your side of the family. And they're definitely not from Dad's. Can you help me understand this?" She paused. I could almost hear her breathing change. "Those things aren't accurate," she said quickly. "They make mistakes all the time. But Mom, I share more DNA with these people than I do with your sister. It's not a glitch." That's when she changed. Her voice got sharp. Defensive. "I told you before. Your father is your father. End of story. I don't care what some website says." I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff and the person I thought would catch me was the one pushing me off. "Are you saying you've never heard of these people?" I asked, trying one last time. "Never," she snapped. "And I'm done talking about it." And just like that, she hung up. I sat in silence, phone in my lap, staring at the wall. It wasn't just the lack of answers that hurt, it was the refusal to even try. I didn't want to accuse her of anything. I just wanted the truth. But she slammed the door on that. So, I opened another. I messaged one of the names on my DNA match list, the woman listed as my aunt. I kept it short and honest. "Hi, I know this might sound strange, but I took a DNA test and it says we're closely related. I believe you may be my biological family. I'm just trying to understand where I come from." I didn't expect a response. But I got one fast. Her name was Carol. And when she replied, it wasn't with confusion. It was with warmth. And clarity. "Oh my God. We've been wondering about you for years." Those words made my heart stop. "I think I know who your father is," she wrote. "Let me call my sister. We'll help you figure this out." That night, I stared at my screen in disbelief. For so long, I felt like something was missing inside me, like a puzzle I couldn't finish because someone hid the last piece. And here it was, suddenly in front of me, being offered by people I had never met. But at the same time, I felt guilty. Like I was betraying my mother by searching. Like maybe I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. And yet, what was I supposed to do? Pretend I didn't know? Pretend I didn't care? I had to find out who I was. Even if the answers tore my family in two. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my mom's voice, the fear in it. The anger. And I kept thinking about the message I'd received from a stranger, who might actually be my aunt. A stranger who seemed more willing to give me the truth than my own mother. Carol messaged me again the next morning. "My sister and I talked," she said. "And we know who your father is." I felt my heart skip. I wasn't ready. I'd spent years making peace with the idea that my dad, the one who raised me, was gone, buried in my childhood. Even if he wasn't perfect. even if he wasn't kind. Even if parts of him left scars I didn't always understand. But now, there was someone else. Someone I had never heard of. Someone I was biologically tied to, and yet had no memory of. Carol asked if she could call me. I said yes. Her voice was kind. Nervous, but warm. Like she'd been preparing for this moment for years. His name is Alan, she said. Alan Davis. He used to work with the man you grew up thinking was your father. Alan. The name didn't ring a bell. She kept going. Your mom and Alan were seeing each other for a little while. It was right around the time she separated from her husband. They had a thing, a brief relationship. But then she went back. To him. I didn't know what to say. I just listened. Carol paused, as if bracing herself. He never stopped wondering, she said. He told us once years ago that he suspected he had a daughter out there. That you might be his. But he didn't want to interfere. Not without proof. I couldn't speak. Part of me was frozen, trying to replay every childhood memory in a new light. He's been watching from afar, she added softly. On social media. Quietly. Just hoping. That part shattered something in me. The idea that this man, this stranger, had known about me, cared about me, but stayed away to protect me? It was the opposite of everything I had known from the man who raised me. He had watched me grow from behind a screen, never reaching out. Because he didn't want to wreck the life I thought I had. That kind of restraint. That kind of silent love. It didn't feel like something I was used to. Carol asked if she could pass my contact information along to him. I said yes. Part of me was terrified. But part of me needed to know. That evening, I got a message. Hi. I don't know how to start this. I've thought about this moment for years. If you're open to talking, I'd love to connect. No pressure. Just whenever you're ready. It was from Alan. And just like that, the man I never knew I needed was right there. We set up a call. I didn't tell my mom. I couldn't. After her reaction, I knew she wouldn't help me, or even acknowledge it. But I had to move forward. For myself. When we finally spoke, I expected awkwardness. Hesitation. But Alan's voice was calm. Familiar, in a strange way. You look just like my sister, he said with a little laugh. And you have my mother's eyes. I didn't know how to respond. I just listened. He told me his version of the story. That he met my mom while working at a construction firm. That they became friends, then more than friends. That she had recently split from her husband at the time, the man I thought was my father. We kept it casual, he said. But she wanted more. I had just gone through a divorce and wasn't ready. I told her that. She got upset. And eventually, she went back to him. He paused there. When I heard she was pregnant a few months later, I wondered. But she was already back with him. I assumed she would tell me if it were mine. She never did. And once again, I was left holding pieces of a story I never asked to be part of. Alan said he didn't reach out because he didn't want to disrupt my life, especially if he was wrong. But I never stopped wondering, he added. It was surreal. A man I had never met was looking at me like I was someone he'd always known. Like a missing piece of his heart had suddenly appeared. We talked for 2 hours that night. Not just about the past, but about music, books, my favorite foods, his hobbies, the little things that suddenly felt like threads tying us together. I asked him one question that had been burning in me. Do you think she knew? My mom? He sighed. I think she did. At some point, deep down. I think she knew. That answer hurt more than I expected. Because if she knew, then why did she lie? Why did she bury it? Why did she look me in the eye for years and let me believe a man who abused her, and maybe abused me, was my father? The truth should have brought relief. But instead, it brought grief. Grief for the years I lost. Grief for the family I never got to know. Grief for the version of my mom I thought would always protect me, and instead hid me from myself. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Not because I'd found my real dad, but because he wasn't the one who got to raise me. After my call with Alan, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. It was like every part of my childhood was laid out in front of me, rewritten. What I thought I knew was just scaffolding, flimsy, hollow, waiting to collapse under the weight of the truth. I kept replaying my mother's voice in my head. Her denial. Her sharpness. Her refusal to give even an inch of ground, even when I had proof. And now, I had more than just DNA. I had names. Faces. Memories. From people who were willing to talk when she wasn't. I knew I had to speak to her again. Not to accuse. Not to shame. Just to ask one more time for honesty. When I called, she picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Mom," I said quietly. There was a pause, like she was already bracing for what was coming. "What now?" That tone, defensive, tired, hard. "I spoke to them," I said. "Carol." "Alan." She didn't answer. "They told me everything. About you and Alan. About how you were separated at the time. About how he always suspected I might be his." Still, she said nothing. I could feel her silence pressing through the phone, heavy and uncomfortable. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I finally asked. "Because it wasn't that simple," she said sharply. "Because I don't remember it the way they do." "What do you mean?" Her voice cracked, just slightly. "I was under a lot of stress. Your sister was sick. I was living with my brother. Anne. I wasn't with your dad." "Not really." But he was still around. And I was vulnerable. I felt my breath catch. "Are you saying something happened?" "I don't know," she snapped. "I don't remember it all clearly. Maybe I blocked some of it out. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. I don't know what to tell you." I sat with that. The first real crack in her armor. Not denial, but chaos. Confusion. Guilt, maybe. "He said you and he had a relationship," I told her. "That you wanted more, and he didn't. And you went back to Dad." "That's not how I remember it." She sounded tired. Worn down. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she added after a long pause. "I just wanted to move on. I wanted to protect you from that part of my life. From him. But in doing that, you protected the wrong man," I said, my voice shaking. "You let me believe I was his daughter. You let me believe I was part of that family. Even after everything they did to you, and to me." That was the hardest part. Knowing that in her silence, she had chained me to a legacy that wasn't mine, a name, a memory, a bloodline I never asked for. And worse, one I never wanted. She didn't respond. I could hear her breathing, sharp, like she was holding back tears or rage. Maybe both. "I needed to know the truth," I said quietly. "And I found it without you. But I wish you had told me first. I wish you had trusted me enough to share your pain, instead of burying it." "You don't understand," she whispered. "You're too young to know what it's like to be scared and alone. To feel like every choice is the wrong one." "I don't need to understand everything," I replied. "But I deserve the truth. I'm not a child anymore." There was silence again. This time, not angry, just empty. Like we had both run out of words, run out of breath. "What are you going to do?" she asked after a long beat. I'm going to meet him, I said. And his family. My family. She sighed, long and heavy. Just, don't let them rewrite everything. You had a life here. With me. I know, I said. And I'll always carry that. But I want the missing pieces too. She didn't say goodbye. She just hung up. And I sat there, feeling more alone than I had in years. It's a strange thing, realizing your mother, the woman who raised you, might never give you the truth you're looking for. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because she can't face it herself. For days after that conversation, I walked around in a fog. Not angry. Not even sad. Just hollow. Like someone had opened the door to a room I never knew existed, and now I couldn't go back to pretending it wasn't there. I talked to my sisters. They were caught in the middle, trying to be supportive, but clearly leaning toward our mom. She's been through a lot, one said. Maybe you should just let it go, the other added. Let it go. How do you let go of the truth? How do you let go of yourself? Eventually, I stopped asking them for advice. I started journaling. Therapy. Connecting more with Alan. And slowly, I began to feel less like a stranger in my own skin. But something inside me had changed forever. This wasn't just about meeting my biological dad. It was about reclaiming the story of who I was. Even if it meant leaving behind the version my mother had given me. I thought the hardest part was over. Finding out the truth. Facing my mom. Hearing her voice crack for the first time when she said she didn't remember it clearly. But I was wrong. Because just when I thought I'd pieced together enough of the puzzle to move forward, a new piece surfaced. And this one twisted everything again. It started with a message from Carol, my aunt from Alan's side. Hey, I've been thinking, she wrote. There's something I didn't tell you at first. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't know if it mattered until now. That sentence alone made my heart race. She went on. When Alan and your mom were seeing each other, your biological father wasn't the only one concerned about the situation. Your NBD, the man you believed was your father, he knew. He knew they were seeing each other. I didn't understand. Carol continued. He got angry. Threatened Alan once. Said he'd make her regret stepping out. After that, things between them stopped, quickly. Alan always said it ended too abruptly. Too strangely. And that's when it hit me. What if my mom didn't choose to go back to my non-bio dad? What if she was scared? I reached out to Alan again. I asked him, gently, if he thought there was something more to what happened. His response was quiet, hesitant. I didn't want to believe it at the time, he said. But I did think something wasn't right. Your mom stopped answering my calls. She looked afraid the last time I saw her. Like she was carrying something heavy. That something heavy had lived in our house for years, I just hadn't seen it clearly. I remembered flashes from childhood. Mom flinching at loud voices. Doors always locked. Bruises she said came from being clumsy. I never questioned it back then. I was a kid. But now? It all looked different. And then, my cousin dropped another bombshell. She messaged me one night, out of nowhere. Hey. I heard what's been going on. I didn't want to say anything before, but there's something you should know. Another message. Another you should know. She told me that years ago, when I was just a toddler, she'd overheard an argument, my mom and NBD. She didn't remember the exact words. But she remembered yelling, crying, and one sentence that haunted her for years. You forced me into it. I didn't want to. And now you're going to pretend she's yours? My stomach dropped. I sat there for what felt like forever, rereading those words. You forced me into it. Could it be? Could my mother have been assaulted, By the man I grew up calling my father, and then manipulated or coerced into hiding it? And worse. Could she have been forced into that situation with Alan, the man I had just begun to trust? Was it possible that Alan didn't know? Or worse, did he know more than he admitted? I didn't know what to believe anymore. Everyone's story was fragmented, filled with silence, memory gaps, and trauma buried beneath decades of avoidance. I tried to talk to my mom again. I called her. She didn't answer. So I sent her a message. I told her what I had learned. That I wasn't angry. Just confused. That I wanted to understand, not accuse. She replied hours later. A short voice note. Her voice was quiet, tired, and trembling. I don't remember everything, but I remember feeling trapped, scared. I thought I was in control, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe none of it was what I thought it was. I've spent years trying to forget it, but it won't leave me. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. She was my mother. The woman who raised me. The one who cooked my meals, packed my school lunches, sang me lullabies when I was sick. But she was also a woman who had endured something I couldn't fully comprehend. And in her pain, she buried not just the truth, but me. I was born from chaos. From betrayal. From fear, maybe even violence. It was a weight I didn't know how to carry. For days, I didn't speak to anyone. Not Alan. Not Carol. Not even my sisters. I needed silence. To process. To feel. To decide what parts of the truth I could live with. And then, something strange happened. Carol reached out again. This time with a photo. It was of Alan, young, probably in his 30s, smiling awkwardly next to my mom. They looked happy. Genuinely happy. This was taken a few weeks before everything fell apart, she wrote. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw the version of the story that wasn't all pain. A version where maybe, just maybe, love existed. Even if it was buried. Complicated. Short-lived. Maybe the truth wasn't just one thing. Maybe it never is. After everything. The tests, the calls, the revelations, the silence. I thought I'd finally feel whole. That the truth would somehow fix me. But the truth didn't heal anything. It broke me open. Because once you learn that your whole life was built on a secret, or worse, a lie, you don't just move on. You start questioning everything. Who am I? If my name, my father, my childhood, were all stitched together from pain? For weeks, I walked through life like I was underwater. Friends asked what was wrong. I smiled and said I was tired. But inside, I was unraveling. I couldn't look at my reflection without wondering whose features I saw. My nose, my eyes, the curve of my mouth, were they Alan's? Or were they his sisters? His mother's? And more than that, did my mom see someone else's face every time she looked at me? Was that why she never told me? Why she flinched when I made jokes about not looking like Dad? Because I was a living reminder of something she never wanted to remember? I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I needed someone to help me hold the pieces in place. I needed to say things out loud that I was afraid to admit, even to myself. I feel like I don't belong anywhere. I love my mom, but I don't trust her anymore. I want to meet Alan again, but I don't know if I'm ready. The therapist nodded gently, like she understood every word before I even spoke it. And slowly, I started putting language to my grief. Because that's what it was, a grief. Not just for the man I thought was my father, but for the life I thought I had. For the mother I thought I knew. For the childhood I had to reimagine from scratch. One night, I pulled out our old photo albums. The ones from before I knew. I flipped through each page like a stranger, searching for signs. In every smile, every hug, every birthday candle. I wondered, was that real? Or was it staged for the camera? And then I saw it, a photo I hadn't noticed before. It was me, maybe 3 years old, sitting on my mother's lap. She was holding me tight. Not smiling, just looking down at me with this exhausted tenderness. Like the weight of the world was in her arms. I stared at that photo for a long time. And for the first time in weeks. I didn't feel angry. I felt compassion. Because no matter how much she hid from me, she had raised me. She had protected me the only way she knew how. Even if it wasn't the way I needed. That realization didn't erase the hurt. It didn't fix our fractured relationship. But it gave me a little room to breathe. To feel both hurt and love. To grieve and still want to heal. I started writing letters. One to my mother. Not to send. Just to write. I poured everything out. The betrayal. The confusion. The unanswered questions. And underneath it all, the love that still remained, no matter how bruised. Then I wrote one to Alan. That one. I did send. I'm still figuring things out, I wrote. But I want to keep talking. I want to get to know you. I'm not ready to call you Dad, maybe I never will. But I want to know the man whose blood runs through my veins. He responded the next morning. Whatever you're ready for, I'll be here. Those words meant everything. No pressure. No expectation. Just presence. Something I didn't realize I'd always wanted. And slowly, day by day, I started to come back to myself. Not the version I was before the DNA test. Not the girl shaped by lies. But a woman who could carry the truth. Even if it was messy. Even if it hurt. Because the truth is better than the silence. It's the only way you ever really know who you are. And I was finally learning that identity isn't just biology. It's not just who raised you, or who gave you their eyes. It's the choices you make when the ground beneath you crumbles. I chose to forgive, but not forget. I chose to connect, without needing answers to every question. I chose to reclaim my name, my history, myself. Piece by piece, scar by scar. This journey broke me. But it also rebuilt me. And I'm learning that's what healing really is. Not a perfect ending. But the courage to keep going, with the truth in your hands, and your heart wide open. It's been almost a year since I found out. A year since that DNA test showed up in my inbox. And changed everything. And now, on the other side of the chaos, the grief, the silence, and the truth. I'm still standing. Not the same person, no. But maybe a stronger one. Definitely a more honest one. Life didn't magically fix itself. But I've learned that some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be carried. I still talk to Alan. We've met in person 3 times. The first time, I was shaking so much I could barely speak. But when he hugged me gently, like he was afraid to break me, something inside me clicked. It wasn't like in the movies. There were no fireworks, no teary-eyed reunion speeches. Just 2 people, trying to figure out how to be something to each other. He's been patient. He asks questions. He listens when I talk about my childhood, even when the stories don't include him. He never tries to claim space he didn't earn. And maybe that's what makes it easier to let him in. We're building something. Not from the past, but from the present. And that feels real. I've also kept some distance from my mom. We speak occasionally. Mostly short conversations. Surface-level things. There's a gap now, not just from what was said, but from what was never said. She still hasn't offered a full explanation. She probably never will. But I've accepted that I may never get closure from her. And that's okay. Closure isn't something people give you. Sometimes, you give it to yourself. I've had to grieve a lot this past year. The dad I thought I had. The mom I once trusted without question. The version of my life that was easier to believe than the truth. But grief isn't just about endings. It's also about honoring beginnings. And in many ways, I've begun again. I reconnected with my half-sister. The one from Alan's side. We talk weekly now. We've bonded over everything, our shared features, our wildly different upbringings, our love for spicy food and bad rom-coms. It's funny, she said she always knew I was out there. That her dad told her about me years ago. I used to look for you on social media, she admitted. I didn't want to invade your life. But I always hoped we'd meet someday. That made me cry. Not from sadness. But from the strange joy of being wanted, even when I didn't know it. We've made new memories now. Late-night phone calls. Inside jokes. Family group chats with way too many emojis. It's not perfect. But it's real. And that's more than I ever thought I'd get. I don't know what the future holds for me and Alan. Maybe we'll become close. Maybe we'll always be cautiously connected. But I know this much. I'm no longer afraid of the truth. I'm no longer defined by someone else's silence. And I'm learning, day by day, that identity isn't about finding one perfect answer. It's about holding all the pieces, the broken ones, the beautiful ones, and calling them yours. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's this. Family isn't just blood. And truth isn't just facts. Family is who shows up when your world shatters. Who sits with you in the mess. Who accepts you, not just for where you came from, but for who you're becoming. And truth? Truth is complicated. Messy. Painful. But it's also the beginning of healing. Of freedom. Sometimes, the hardest truths open the door to the most honest life. I wouldn't wish this journey on anyone. But I also wouldn't trade it. Because it taught me who I really am. Have you ever uncovered a secret that changed everything? Have you ever had to rebuild your identity from the ground up? If you've been through something like this, or you're going through it right now, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. Even if it's just a few words, someone else might need to hear it. Someone else might be where you are. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories about truth, family, resilience, and the complicated beauty of being human.